AI, machine learning, LLMs. You hear these terms everywhere, right? Especially if you're in tech. But what do they actually mean when you have to make a real decision? One with a budget attached. Well, in this explainer, we're going to cut right through all that hype. We'll give you a super practical framework that I promise will change how you talk about this stuff in your very next meeting. And this quote from our source, it just nails it. This distinction separates PMs who understand AI from those who just use buzzwords. Wow. I mean, think about that. Knowing the difference isn't just about sounding smart in a meeting. It's about your credibility. It's about whether you can make good calls on feasibility, on cost, basically on whether your project succeeds or fails. So that's the big question, isn't it? How do you make that jump? How do you go from just repeating the latest buzzwords to actually making smart, strategic decisions that lead to better products? Okay, let's break down the framework that's going to get you there. All right, here's the tool you've been waiting for. We're calling it the Cost Reality Framework. And honestly, just think of it as your secret weapon. It's a dead simple way to look at any AI project by breaking it down into one of 3 basic approaches. And each one has very different trade-offs. Yep, that's it. At the end of the day, all that crazy complexity around AI, it really just boils down to 3 fundamental choices. And once you see them laid out with their different costs, control levels, and what they can actually do, everything gets a whole lot clearer. Let's start with the first one. Okay, first up, we have the simplest approach of all, rules. Seriously, this is just good old-fashioned if-then logic. Think about a pricing calculator on a website. If you select option A, then the price is X. It's not smart, it's not intelligent, but you know what? For the specific jobs it's built for, it is 100% accurate. It's totally predictable, and it costs basically nothing to run. You are in complete, total control. All right, taking a step up the ladder, we get to machine learning, or ML. Now, this is where things get interesting. Here, we're not writing explicit rules anymore. Instead, we're feeding a bunch of data to a model to train it for a very specific task. Things like, is this a support ticket about billing or a technical issue, or is this customer likely to churn next month? We're trading that 100% predictability for the power to see complex patterns, and we can still get really high accuracy. And finally, at the very top of the complexity pyramid, we have the big one, large language models, or LLMs. You know them, you love them. Think ChatGPT. These things are absolute beasts. They're massive, incredibly expensive models built for generative tasks. Writing stuff, summarizing articles, being the brains behind a chatbot. They are unbelievably powerful, but, and this is a huge but, that power comes with a hefty price tag in terms of money, precision, and how much control you actually have over what it spits out. Okay, and here it is. This is where it all clicks into place. This table is the heart of the entire framework. Just look at the columns: data cost, compute cost, accuracy, and the big one, PM control. As you move from left to right, from rules to ML to LLMs, you can see the trade-offs in plain black and white. With rules, for 0 cost, you get total control. Step up to ML, and for a pretty big investment, you get high accuracy, but you give up some of that control. And then you jump to an LLM, a massive investment, and your control is even lower, and frankly, so is the predictable accuracy. Let's zoom in on that data cost for a second, because the numbers are staggering. A rules-based system, it's free. You just write the logic. An ML model, that could run you up to $100,000 just for the data, getting it, cleaning it, labeling it. But an LLM, you could be looking at $1 million or more. This is exactly why jumping straight to let's use an LLM without even thinking about the other 2 options is such a massive, massive financial risk. And this right here, this visualizes the fundamental trade-off of the whole framework. It's an inverse relationship. As you chase more generative power, moving from simple rules to complex LLMs, you are actively giving up direct control and predictability. Your accuracy shifts from being a sure thing to being a probability. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a choice, a very deliberate one that you have to make with your eyes wide open. Okay, so we get the framework, right? We see the trade-offs. But how do we actually use this thing? Let's talk about putting this tool to work in the wild. How you can walk into your very next meeting and start asking smarter questions and making way better decisions. This is all about turning this knowledge into real, tangible influence. So from now on, instead of just nodding your head when someone throws out the word AI, you can come back with sharp, targeted questions. To your data science team, you can frame it as a business trade-off. Okay, what's our accuracy target here? And what's our budget?
To engineering, what are the compute costs going to look like? Can we actually afford to run this thing at scale? And, this one's my favorite, to design, so what's our plan for when the model is wrong? Because, and you can say this with confidence, it will be wrong sometimes. Asking these questions instantly shows you understand the real-world challenges.
This framework also becomes your built-in BS detector. It helps you spot trouble way before it gets out of hand. From now on, if you hear a goal as vague as, let's use AI for this, bam, that's a red flag. That's a solution desperately looking for a problem. If you see a project plan that totally ignores those huge data costs we just talked about, red flag. Or the classic one, someone suggests using a $1 million LLM to solve a problem that a few simple if-then rules could handle perfectly. You now have the clear, cost-based logic to stand up and say, hang on a second. All right, enough theory. Let's put this framework to a real-world test. Think of this as a pop quiz, a chance to see how you can apply these concepts when the pressure's on. Okay, here's the scenario. It's vague, it's ambitious, and guess what? It's just been dropped in your lap. I'm sure this sounds familiar. Leadership is super excited about building an AI customer insights platform, and everyone in the room turns and looks at you, waiting for a plan. Now, the common impulse here, the buzzword-driven reaction, is to immediately jump to the flashiest tool in the box. Oh, an insights platform. Awesome. Let's use an LLM to analyze all the customer feedback. But as we now know, that could be a very expensive and maybe even disastrous first move. But you've got the framework now. You know better. You see the costs. You see the trade-offs. So you don't jump to a solution. You start with a clarifying question. So what is it? What's the very first, most critical question that a master of this framework asks? It's actually really simple. You ask, what specific problem are we trying to solve here? And what's the simplest, cheapest approach that can actually solve it? See, by starting there, you guide the entire conversation away from expensive buzzwords and towards a smart, effective, and realistic solution.